Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Blue Collar Real Estate. I'm Greg Mayo.
And I'm Ryan Herget. Today we are going to dive into the second part of our series on green building and green technology. We're going to talk about specific products that you can use if this is something that's important to you. I'm super excited to dive into this today, Greg, and I know you're already geeked out. So.
Dude, this is so cool. When my kids were in Cub Scouts, I used to do a module every year on recycling, and I would bring in building materials that were made from recycled products and show them when you put stuff in the recycle bin, it actually gets made into stuff. So I'm really excited. Before we get into it, there you are. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. Any questions or comments, Ryan and I would both love to hear from you. Today's episode brought to you by Walt's Haberdashery and Food Delivery Service. Because not only is haberdashery fun to say, but having a mobile tailor that brings you a sandwich too.
Why not?
I don't see the downside.
Kill two birds, one stone, right?
Isn't that a fun word, haberdashery?
I've never even, I'm like sitting in the studio today, I'm like learning all kinds of stuff that I didn't even, like words I didn't know. Apparently I need to go back to third grade and pick up some new vocab. But let's get started. We're going to talk today about different green materials. We're going to talk about different products that people consider if this is something that they want to take on. We're going to dive into something that is hugely popular right now, and that is using recycled easy for me to say, products to build furniture, which I know is something you're super passionate about too. So let's dive into this, man.
And probably as we get going, we should probably define what green building materials are, generally speaking.
Yeah, let's start there. That's good.
Generally speaking, they're products that have a low environmental impact.
Okay, so I'm going to take that a step deeper. What's low environmental impact actually mean, Greg?
Well, that can be from the production method of actually producing whatever product it is. Could be where the materials come from.
Yeah.
And it could be the actual materials themselves. Okay. And we're going to break down each one of those a little bit today.
Yeah, we're going to show a few different examples. We've got some photos. So if you're listening on iTunes or Stitcher or any of those, be sure to check out the YouTube video on this as well on our Blue Collar Real Estate page. You'll be able to see some of the photos and different items that we're talking about here.
Okay, so let's talk about the actual materials first.
Okay, let's start there.
Let's start with recycled materials. When you toss items into a recycle bin, like I was just talking about with the Cub Scouts, a lot of people, I kid you not, have told me they just assumed it all went to the landfill and it was just for show and optics. It's not. They actually make cool stuff out of these products that we recycle. And in the municipality I live in, curbside recycling is free.
That's huge.
So I fill up 3 recycle bins, a household of 4 people, 3 recycle bins every week, and about half of a trash can.
Decent.
And I could probably do better.
That's way better than me.
So, but some communities, it costs you money for a trash can, but recycling's free.
Interesting.
Which I think is brilliant as well.
So what product do you want to start with here, Greg? Because there is literally a plethora of options that we could start with. So let's go ahead and pick the first one that we want to dive into and share with the audience today.
So the first one, and I'm trying to, there you go. Oh, that's so sexy. So this, it looks like a granite or maybe a Corian countertop, but it's recycled glass.
So a recycled glass countertop. So I'm, again, learning new stuff here today because I love green stuff, and this is not something that I was familiar with until we were putting the show notes together for this a few days back. So tell everybody what a recycled glass countertop actually is, because it looks just like granite or quartz.
It does, and it's about the same cost.
Okay.
As a nice granite or quartz, but the difference is the energy involved in harvesting granite out of the ground.
Gosh, yeah.
Not only transporting it. I love it when people say, I'm concerned about the environment, but I imported all my countertops from Italy.
Right.
The transportation cost, this recycled glass stuff, almost every major city now has a facility that makes it. They take glass, and sometimes they separate it by color. You can tell this one's got a lot of blues in it and some different ones. But they bond it together with an epoxy resin, and then once it's formed and hardened, they sand it down so there's not sharp edges. You're not going to cut your finger. But you can set a hot pot on it. Now, That's awesome. Now, somebody's going, no, don't tell them that, but you can. I mean, you really can. And again, it's about the similar cost of granite or a nice quartz, but it's a recycled product.
Well, and you said something there that really just sparked a thought. I've got a really good friend that owns a excavating company, okay? And they go out and they don't do, they're not mining quartz and doing all that. But I want you to think about this real quick. The machines that it takes to excavate quartz and cut those huge slabs, those are massive diesel burning machines that don't get good gas mileage,
Right.
even a little bit. I mean, the cost of running a massive excavator or forklift or any of that stuff, it's gigantic. That's why building costs so much, because you're spending at least $200 or $300 an hour before you pay the guy to run the machine just to fuel the darn thing.
Right.
So it's insane. And what's the environmental impact of that to put your stone that, yes, it comes from the earth, but yet, to put that stone countertop in? It's massive. And that's stuff that not a lot of people actually consider. People like to complain, well, why does this stuff cost so much? Well, because it's so expensive to get out of the ground and to manufacture. And it's also not doing the world a whole lot of favors, is it?
Exactly. And that's a great point. I mean, you look at a D9 Cat that they use in these big quarries, one of those giant dump trucks. It's like 4 stories tall. I imagine it gets 37, 40 gallons to the mile. I mean, I can't.
It's just insane, the fuel consumption of these big products. But anyway, that's not what we're here to talk about today. But
so that's something you can do. The recycled glass. Now, the next countertop, this is so cool. Nobody ever guesses what it is. Now, I already told you.
Yep.
But if you're watching on YouTube, if you're watching on Spotify or something, that's weird. But if you're watching on YouTube, check this out. That countertop on the island is recycled paper.
So, all right, you got to back up 10 steps on this one for me, because how the hell does that work? You've got a countertop made out of recycled paper.
Isn't
Tell
that
me about
cool?
that. I've never heard of this one either.
They take paper in that they've recycled. They dye it. They clean it. They dye it. They compress it with resins to hold it together. And what you get is it almost looks like leather, doesn't it?
It does. It looks like a leather belt is what it looks like. You see the butcher's block tops. You put one of those in a few weeks ago for one of our clients. This literally looks about the same. It doesn't have the individual boards in there, but it's almost the same color. It looks fantastic. So this is something that I had no idea even existed, and I'm sure that a lot of other people out there didn't either.
No, and that's the thing, awareness, right? You got to know the stuff's out there. That I'm probably going to put in a different color in my kitchen.
Now, I
haven't told my wife yet.
I have an important question for you on this. Can you put a hot pot on this without it like burning a hole or burning your house down?
I'd say no.
Probably not.
Now, it's not going to...
It's not going to catch fire if
Right.
you drop something on it, obviously. But
drop a hot wing
nevertheless,
on it and it catches no. And it'll function like a countertop, right? You can spill on it and wipe it off and whatever. But yeah, no, you don't want to set a hot pot on that.
That's awesome, though. I love the fact that somebody was innovative enough to come up with this idea and put it in place, because the environmental impact of what we're doing to this earth is something that I'm super passionate about. I know you are as well. And this is, again, just the awareness that this exists, which is why we're even doing this series on green products, is just to share the awareness that this is something that you can do something about. This is a choice that you can make in order to leave the world a better place. So.
And we can quit, and if I can just a little sidebar here for a second. If we can quit putting everything in the landfill that doesn't need to go in the landfill, there's a place, when I used to coach youth soccer, when my kids were still Utes, there was a soccer field in central Indiana, we'll just say that was made on top of old landfill. Just north of that is an archery club I belong to that's old landfill property, and just north of that is a golf course. Actually, it's a beautiful course. That's old landfill property.
Interesting.
Now, all that covers a couple miles, right, up this road. And then just to the east of it is the existing landfill, the active landfill, which is huge and ginormous. My point is we're wasting so much land.
Truly. And, I was tearing a deck out this I was back in June or July of this year. We're in the end of December now, so it was a while ago, but I took my son to, we had to get rid of all that wood, right? We had to do something with it. It was pressure treated lumber, and we had to do something with it. So we took it to the landfill, and part of me felt guilty there because we couldn't use it for our, our fire in our backyard. But, as we're going through this landfill, I mean, we were just talking about excavators. There is just massive, massive piles of stuff everywhere. And I don't think people really take into consideration how much they're actually using and what their impact is on the world. I mean, if you have a family of 4, which is not a big family, I mean, you're throwing away so much. I know we throw away a trash can a day, or not a trash can, but a bag of trash a day.
What are you
know,
doing?
in our house? But it's that stuff all has to go somewhere, right? And
Right.
the environmental impact on that, when you take the compound effect of every human on Earth, and then every single day they're consuming stuff, that stuff does have to go somewhere. And are we going to continue to bury it, or are we going to find alternative methods to do something constructive with it like this? And I think that's what I'm so passionate about, is how do we create the awareness so people know what the hell they're doing and what the impact of their decisions are.
And we can not only find a whole bunch of uses, because there are brilliant men and women out there figuring out ways to make paper countertops.
Absolutely.
But so not only for post-consumer goods, but which we'll talk about, but I'm going to spend a whole episode at some point talking about how to deconstruct a building and everything in there that can be recycled and what it's made into. We'll get into that a little bit here in a minute. But the point is, 90% of the stuff that goes in a landfill doesn't have to.
It doesn't have to. I completely agree. So we've talked about some different types of countertops that can be used. What are some other green products that maybe people aren't familiar with, or that they could possibly take advantage of?
Ooh, decking.
So
look at that.
about that. Here
Right?
we go. This looks better.
This is a composite decking. And composite means it's made with wood fiber and recycled plastic, usually recycled plastic bags and milk jugs.
Yeah.
So the bags that you get at the grocery store or whatever, and the milk jugs you put in them, they make a composite deck board out of it. Now, the advantages for a homeowner with this kind of decking, as you well know, you don't have to stain it, seal it every couple of years. You just power wash it off twice a year, and it looks great for decades. It's an amazing product. Yes, it costs a little bit more.
But, again, yes, it carries a slightly elevated upfront cost on it. However, the impact of what you have to do, again, let's pretend you're going to stay in your house for 5 years even. Okay, the average American stays in their house just over 7 years, but let's say you move every 5 years. Well, that deck, you're going to have to stain it 3 or 4 times. And, what's a gallon of wood stain cost? $50 now or more. Okay.
And your time.
Yeah. And your time doing it. And the fact that it still looks like crap after 4 or 5 years, versus you can spend a little more on a product like this, power wash it once or twice a year, and you're done. And yes, you spend a little more up front, but oh my gosh, what's it look like 5 years later? Because how many people actually stain their decks every single year?
Right.
Most I know don't.
I know. When I was a deck builder, I would hand a sheet to them when I was done. This is how you take care of your deck for the next 3 years. How long you wait before you seal it, and yada, yada, yada. Nobody ever did it.
Nobody ever does it.
Nobody.
And it's not because people don't want to. It's people just get busy with life.
Right.
And, you forget to do a couple things, like, forgetting to change the oil in your car. If you don't do it every 6,000 miles, you're going to have problems very shortly thereafter. Decks, wood are the exact same thing. And this is just a very, very cool product. I built a deck this past summer with this. And it's easier to use, in my opinion. And it just goes down so well because you're not dealing with all these twisted boards, everything else that goes along with using a wood product.
Right. And so it's a lot more accountable.
Agreed.
Each piece of wood.
Well said. So we've talked about some different types of countertops. We've talked about wood. This is one of my favorite ones. I've got a cool story on this, but go ahead and tell everybody what we're looking at here.
So that looks like just regular bad insulation, and it is, but it's made from blue jeans.
This is so cool. So you would think, how the hell would blue jeans insulate my house? Tell us about this.
Well, when you take your jeans off and get them out of the dryer, you roll them up. And no. So what they've done, denim wears out and jeans look crappy. And yes, some people, young people, go into stores and they buy jeans that look crappy for $100. I never get that. But nonetheless, they figured out a way to grind them up, to bond them together, and to use it as wall insulation. So you're not using fiberglass. You're not using cellulose, which will compress. The compression factor on this is almost nil. And the ancillary benefit you get from using this product for insulation is the sound dampening. You have a cool story about that.
I do. So years ago now, when I was I'm working in the Las Vegas real estate market, and I went into a new home builder out there, and they were just introducing this product into their homes out in Las Vegas at the time, and they were so proud of this, and I'm like, yeah, who cares? And then the saleswoman, she literally has this screaming alarm clock. I mean, you think of the alarm on your iPhone, this is like 10 times that loud. It's like, well, you turned that off already when, as soon as she turned it on. But they had a 5-gallon bucket, right? And it was filled with this product, and there was a small little cutout right in the center of it. And she dropped this screaming alarm into this 5-gallon bucket, put the lid on it, which also had the blue jeans insulation on it, and put the lid on it, and it was deathly quiet. You could not hear a damn thing at this point, and I was like, sold. I want that. It was just, it was so amazing. So when people talk about, I don't want to hear the highway, or I don't want to hear, whatever may be behind your house, or hear my noisy neighbors, etc. This is such a cool product that can easily overcome two needs: insulating your home and dealing with sound.
Yeah, and I had a client, when I redid their bathroom, the master bath, the we'll call it the pooper room, in the master bath, that wall backed up to one of the kids' rooms. Mm-hmm. They wanted a little privacy in the bathroom, so that wall we did with this insulation because it's soundproof. They can have their peace and quiet.
They can do what they got to do there. So I want to dive into something on this because, again, it's all about awareness. People are maybe, you don't walk into Lowe's or Home Depot or a box store and you don't just see this stuff sitting there. You've got to kind of consciously look for it.
Right.
So is it more expensive? Why don't you see more of this versus the general fiberglass or cellulose insulation that you see everywhere?
It's a little more expensive, but not exponentially more expensive. And we don't see a lot of it because of awareness.
Right.
And I'll tell you a story about that. So I was a lumber salesman working with new construction custom home builders up in Northern Illinois, up by Chicago. We're, sometimes a little bit behind in Central Indiana on technology, especially with building technology. So I'm up there, and I got guys building custom homes that are trussing. Mm-hmm. Back then, 15, 16 years ago, whatever it was. They were trussing custom homes and then doing the infill work. Trusses are, as we've talked before, they're more environmentally friendly. They're built in a controlled environment. They're engineered.
Yeah.
It's just a better way to go.
Yeah, you're not out there, cutting boards when it's freezing cold outside like it is outside right now. You don't have all the waste factor that you do if you just ship out a pile of lumber out to a house to have it stick framed, which I love stick framing. I think there's huge benefits to that, but at the same point in time, exactly what you're talking about, the waste, the engineering that goes into it. Anyway, I digress.
And you can have a house roughed in like that.
Yep.
So I get back down to Indiana, and I go to work for a lumber company down here doing the exact same job, right, dealing with custom home builders. I couldn't get half of the framers to agree to truss a garage.
Right.
Well, that stuff's not going to last. I'm like, it sure will. So it's that kind of thing. It's the awareness, right?
Yep.
And I spent my entire career in the lumber business seeking out new energy-efficient technologies and then trying to convince my clients that that was a good idea.
Yeah.
With more awareness, which is part of why we're doing this on the show.
Yep.
With more awareness and people realizing that they can't afford to do it, and it'll help their pocketbook down the line, and that it's just the right thing to do. Yeah. We keep beating that drum over and over, we're going to get awareness.
Yeah, no, I agree. So what else, Greg? What other types of products do we have to look at here?
Ooh,
we've got
plywood.
A piece of wood. We got a piece of wood. We're here to talk to you about a new product called wood.
Wow. Okay. Zip. I keep looking for the red light and it's not there. And then I look away and it's there. See, now it's back. Anyway, FSC, Forest Stewardship Council. This is about how we harvest product.
Okay.
FSC certified lumber means that it was lumber that was harvested in an environmentally low impact fashion. Now, what that really means is there's no clear cutting. Mm-hmm. Of rainforest. A lot of lumber we get, especially framing lumber now, is grown on plantations.
Yeah. And
the rule is you have to put back more acres than you cut down every year. Mm-hmm. So we're planting more trees than we're taking.
But how long does it take that tree, those trees to grow back? I mean, that's not just something that happens every year like a crop does. That's something that takes time, right?
It does. And that's why if you go look at these plantations, they're blocks of trees growing. Now, lumber, if you look at cutaways of lumber from 100 years ago to today, the rings are much more gapped today because they figured out ways to make trees grow faster, especially spruce, pine, and fir, which is mostly what our framing lumber is, which is also why the stuff gets all twisty and wonky because it's not as strong. But so on these plantations, they get them to grow fast. They're usually harvestable in 12 to 20 years, but they got to keep planting more, and they got to plant more. And another thing, and just a quick note here, if you're concerned about global warming, whether you think we're responsible for it or it's just a natural cycle, if it's something that concerns you, plant a tree. Plant several trees. Mm-hmm. If globally, if we planted 1 billion trees next year, we'd solve a lot of problems we have. I'm just saying, not going to get on a thing.
So
just sharing that.
FSC, so you talked about how something is harvested. Why is that more energy efficient? Why should somebody care about why this is harvested a different way? What's the impact of that?
Well, it's about environmental responsibility is the number one thing. So if you're just clear-cutting rainforest in Brazil, that's not good for the environment.
No.
We need trees. Trees recycle air. They breathe in what we breathe out, and they breathe out what we breathe in. So they're kind of helpful if you're an air-breathing critter like we are. And you want to use companies, and there's no reason in today's modern time, and we can talk about logging operations 100 years ago, what they did and didn't know or should have, shouldn't have done. It doesn't matter. Today, we know.
Yep.
And almost all forest or suppliers that I know harvest sustainably now.
Nice.
So if they want to go through the steps to become FSC certified, that means it matters to them. That means they're taking care of the environment in the best way they can. That's not only the way they harvest, it's also water resources. How you, and I don't know anything about planting a tree farm, but I know there are ways to do it where you lessen the impact of water, where there's less erosion. If you clear cut a forest, especially on a slope, you're going to have land erosion. You're going to lose topsoil. Then it's going to clog the streams, and then it's going to choke out fish. I mean, the trickle effect just goes on down the line.
It's not just cutting the tree down. So, again, if you're considering building a brand new house, maybe look for a contractor or a company that uses products similar to this, so that way you know that you're having less of an impact on the environment when you're building your new home.
So, and then the next thing, speaking of framing lumber, LSL.
So this is, again, a little bit different. And I think to a lot of people, because I know one of the first things that ran through my mind when you shared this with me is like, do I really want to build a house out of what looks like plywood? But explain the benefits of this to us, because they're really substantial, I feel.
So laminated strand lumber. You don't, number one, to make a 16-foot 2x4 out of this stuff, and it's dimensional lumber, just like 2x4, 2x6, 2x10, whatever. To make a 16-foot 2x4 out of that stuff, you don't need a 16-foot piece of wood.
Right.
They do it in a controlled environment. The shear strength of it, meaning the cross strength, the breakage, is higher than a standard 2x4 that's plantation grown. They can take a bunch of scraps and pieces, compress it together, and then they mill it down to the exact dimensions.
Right.
You open a bunk of 394 regular 2x4s, and we were talking about this before the show started, you're going to have a bunch of twisted, cockeyed pieces.
Oh, my gosh. The waste and just to dive into that just for a second, but you're absolutely right. I mean, you go to Lowe's or any home improvement store and you go out and pick out 2x4s. I mean, there's going to be a pile of twisted boards that contractors have just kind of picked over, and the waste factor is huge.
Oh, yeah.
I've got one sitting in my garage that I don't know how I overlooked it when I was buying the wood, but I was just doing a small house project, needed some 2x4s, and I got home and I'm like, what the hell? This thing is literally twisted in half down on the other end. And I'm like, how the hell's this happen? And now I literally can't use about 6 foot of this 12-foot board. It's just completely worthless.
We used to call banded lumber girdles because when you pop that band, everything just goes boing.
Yeah.
And the thing with that is the lumber is grown so fast, it goes into the mills wet. It doesn't have time to just sit and dry naturally, so it goes in the mills wet, it's milled, it's kiln dried, rapidly dried.
Yeah. And
then they band it up. So when that band pops, then the wood wants to do its natural thing.
Yeah. Well, and I think something, because, I know this was something that went through my mind when we first started talking about this, is you would think that, oh my gosh, that's just like particles of wood that are glued together, right? And how could that be better than a solid piece of wood? But I want everybody to think about this real quick. I mean, technology has improved every single area of our life over the last 100+ years, or well before that, and we all use products that technology has dramatically improved every day in our lives, right? So why is it that we would have a problem letting technology take advantage of how we actually build our homes? Because you're absolutely right. This stuff doesn't just fall apart. It is incredibly well-engineered material that is going to stand the test of time.
And it's much more accountable wood.
Right.
You bust a band of 2x4s and that stuff, it's all straight as an arrow.
Yep.
And when you frame a house, when you're doing the walls, you have to crown the boards. Otherwise, you have some boards that curve out into the room, some that curve in, and the drywaller will hate you.
Yeah.
This stuff, you're going to pay a little bit more for it, maybe 15 or 20% more, but it's going to save you time in framing the house and putting it together. And it's consistent.
Every single time.
Every single time. So I love this stuff. Beams are often made out of LVL, which is laminated veneer lumber, very similar
product.
Thank you. But instead of chunks like that and strands, it's veneers, like literally sheets that are all compressed together. Also very strong, also factory controlled. But you're right, people fear.
Got producer Jason taking photos here real quick.
People fear what they don't understand.
Absolutely.
And they shy away from what they don't know. So to me, if there's a better technology, if there's a better way to do something, then that's the way we should do it.
Let's consider doing it. I agree. So what else we have on deck here, Greg?
Now,
a bamboo forest.
A bamboo forest.
This is kind of cool.
So you may or may not know, those of you out there watching or listening, bamboo is a grass plant.
Mm-hmm.
I don't recommend planting this in your backyard. I looked at planting it. My backyard in the very back backs up to a fairly busy road. And I was going to plant a 2-foot wide swatch all the way down the backyard of bamboo.
Mm-hmm.
Bamboo spreads through the rhizomes, which is a part of the root, basically, and it spreads under the soil and sprouts up new plants. Because it grows so fast, within just a few short years, my entire backyard would have been covered in bamboo.
That'd be awesome.
It'd be kind of weird for the dog. Bella would be out there running around. I don't know. But bamboo, this is actually a bamboo plantation forest. It grows so ridiculously fast, and it's so hard. When it's made into wood, it's as hard, if not harder, than a lot of exotic hardwoods. Very green because it's very renewable, and it's renewable really, really fast. So a lot of things now, framing lumber in this part of the country or this part of the world is hard to get from bamboo, just from a cost standpoint. But if we can cut to the next picture, that's bamboo lumber.
Got it.
A lot of
beautiful.
Oh, it's absolutely gorgeous, and you don't need stain. You just clear coat it and just let it show off what it is. But a lot of furniture makers and cabinet makers are now using this bamboo lumber.
Got it.
You wouldn't frame a house with it again, but for furniture and cabinetry, it's just gorgeous, and it's sustainable. And eucalyptus is another tree that grows fast. It's grown on plantations in South America. Also, you get gorgeous furniture and flooring out of it. So very cool stuff.
So we're not just talking about products to build your home with. We're talking about products that you can use that are, renewable or, more energy efficient products that, that you can use to decorate your house as well, which is going to talk about, one of the next couple slides we'll look at here is other ways that you can use that to decorate your house.
Okay.
Next slide after this one.
Yeah, but this one's awesome.
I do love this. You again shed a ton of knowledge on me, a few weeks ago when we were putting the show notes together for this. But, you think of, a mill, a wood mill that's, producing all of this. And there is so much sawdust. I don't know if you ever put floors in a house. I know you have, but anybody listening or watching here, there is so much sawdust when you cut something down just for small projects, let alone when you're running massive amounts of wood through a project. So tell us about this. We're looking at a big pile of sawdust. Why does that matter to our audience?
So a lot of molding and millwork manufacturers and window manufacturers, molding and millwork, so windows, doors, trim. Have gone to, they have these massive operations like you're talking about. They generate mounds of sawdust like this. About 16 years ago, 12 years ago, not that anybody out there is going to be like, haha, no, it wasn't. But anyway, I was at a Marvin Windows manufacturing facility, their main one up in War Road, Minnesota. And it's a beautiful operation. Marvin Windows is not a sponsor yet. But y'all call me, we'll hook it up. Anyway, and they had mounds of sawdust back there like this. I started talking to the guy that was running our time there about what they do with all that. Well, they had somebody engineer a furnace that burnt sawdust.
That's awesome.
So their entire, I forget, 1,000,000 acre or 1,000,000 square foot giant facility was heated by burning sawdust, and kilns were heated by burning sawdust.
So it was all used by the byproduct of what they were actually doing every day anyway. So, again, just talking about renewable, recyclable energy, I mean, hell, they're taking the waste of what they were already doing, and instead of burying it in the ground like they had for hundreds of years, they're actually using it to keep their plants running.
How cool is that?
That's awesome. I love that. When people take the time and the ingenuity to do projects like that, that means something to me. And that's why I like doing business with companies that choose to do business that way.
Right. So. And there's not only the environmental impact, which is huge and important, there's also the money they save.
Oh, no doubt.
By not paying for natural gas or whatever to heat their facility, the money they save not having that stuff hauled off.
Yep.
It's absolutely brilliant.
Cool. What else we have, Greg?
Okay, so we talk about using building materials. When you take a house down or remodel a house, there's always framing lumber.
Mm-hmm.
What I found, a lot of times, the lumber in the house is not spruce, pine, fir 2x4s if it's old house. I've gone into houses and started tearing them apart, and the framing was rough sawn oak or rough sawn walnut because they used whatever they had available when they built the house. Now, this picture here is actually chestnut that came out of a 100-year-old barn. So that wood, if you look at the grain pattern in it, how it's kind of swirly, that chestnut that came out of that 100-year-old barn was probably a 100-year-old tree that was cut down when the dude built the barn.
Yeah.
And so my point in showing this picture is, what can you make from products that you save in a house? And we're going to do a whole episode, like I said earlier, on deconstructing a house and where all those products can go. Mm-hmm. But this is just kind of a teaser. So you can take that lumber and you can make a nice table.
Well, and that's become so popular. I know, I'm showing 40 homes a week out there, and more every single day, you're seeing people take, old barn wood. They're taking old wood and they're recycling it. They're using it for decoration. They're using it for walls. I mean, hell, I saw an entire wall the other day that wasn't just shiplap wood, but it was like old barn wood that was cut down, and this wall looked absolutely amazing at what they had done with it. In fact, actually, that home went on the market this morning. So
right on. Well, and the funny thing about that is it's become such a popular thing. You're exactly right that a lot of home stores are now carrying barnwood packages. Yeah. It's not barnwood.
No.
It's just regular pine that they've distressed to look like barnwood. Yeah, you can get the look that way, but I encourage you, if you don't know a supplier, ask me. I know guys that take down houses and barns. We'll find you some actual reclaimed wood.
That's cool as heck. I love that stuff. And we've got one more here to look at, Greg. What do we have right here on the screen?
So that is obviously a set of built-ins, but in the middle, that's all reclaimed pallet wood.
How awesome is that? Pallet wood. The stuff that there's millions of pallets all over the world that, you can take and redo and make something awesome like this. This is cool as hell, in my opinion. It looks fantastic.
Thanks. Yeah, the homeowner was really happy with it. It was a fun project. Because I have OCD issues, everything's symmetrical and balanced. But the pallet wood, we had some pallets. We did this job, 4 or 5 years ago, and we just planed them down. We stained them some different colors. I gave her a color palette to choose from, because the one I did in our house, there's actually some blues in it, and she didn't really want that. And we just installed it. Now, we made an interesting wall covering out of something that would have likely sat in a dumpster, been taken to a landfill, or just rotted away. Mm-hmm. Again, using what was available. And by the way, everything else, all the other wood in that project was made from plywood.
That's cool.
Which plywood is more sustainable than dimensional lumber typically.
Cool. So we've just dove into a handful of different products, starting with countertops, paper countertops, glass, crushed glass countertops. We've talked about several different ways that you can use recycled products to make a more energy efficient home, to have less of an impact on the environment when you're considering home improvement projects moving forward. Greg, what have we missed today?
Well, I don't want to get into it because we've already taken a lot of time, but next episode will be out.
Yeah, we're going to go check out the Lego house. Yeah. I'm so excited to do this. If you don't know what I'm talking about, check out the previous episode that we just did. There is some new product that literally looks like Legos, but is literally 50 times more efficient than framing a house with 2x4s and just general construction.
So we're going to talk about that, and we're going to be on site with that. And then, then the next episode, what I really want to dig into is, and I've teased it a couple times in this episode, but I want to talk about, Let's deconstruct a building and talk about where everything could go. You mentioned asphalt shingles and road base. We talked about furniture with lumber. We can recycle the metal out of there. We can recycle the wood into mulch if it's not usable. Cinder blocks can be made into concrete products. There's just I want to get into all that later.
It goes a long way. So that is it for this edition of Blue Collar Real Estate. I hope you took something away from this. I know we have certainly enjoyed having the conversation about this and bringing some awareness around what these products are and how we can all have a better impact on what's going on with the environment. So for this edition, I'm Ryan Herget.
And I'm Greg Mayo.
Thanks so much.
Take care.